Kane's one more second. Check out all of his articles on LouRockwell.com and Mises.org, and all his great videos too. Thanks for coming, Glenn.
Throw in some specials, so everybody buy wings and beer, I guess. Cool. I'd like to get an idea of the composition of the crowd today. Are there any constitutionalists here? Any real conservatives? Any classic liberals? Any Ron Paul Republicans? Any minarchists? And I'm not going to ask if there are any anarchists here, because I know what the anarchists will do. They will immediately say, I am not participating in this guy's collectivist experiment. I refuse to make any noise. Who does he think he is? What does he think he's the man or something like that? And I know how you guys think. If you're not sure whether you're a libertarian or not, I have a short survey. Would everybody like to take it? Good. If you think that 99% of the politicians give the rest a bad name, you might be a libertarian. If you think the taxes are ridiculously high, you might be a libertarian. If you think that the problem with civil servants is that way too many of them are neither civil nor servants, then you might be a libertarian. If you think that there are too many laws about too many things, then you might be a libertarian. Yay. If you think that no one should go to jail for smoking a flower, then you might be a libertarian. If you're glad that you don't get the government that you pay for, you might be a libertarian. If you believe that the only contract with America that America needs is the United States Constitution, you might be a libertarian. If you believe that the only gun permit that you need is the Second Amendment, then you might be a libertarian. If the only way that you can tell the difference between the right and the left is by which hand is going in your pocketbook, you might be a libertarian. If you believe that the left is way too left and that the right, at least the mainstream right, is just plain wrong, then you might be a libertarian. If you believe that polluters should pay for the environmental damage that they cause, then you might be a libertarian. And if you believe that everything should be bought and sold on the market, with the exception of politicians, you might be a libertarian. So, how many libertarians are there here today? Raise your hand. A while back, my wife and I started an insurance agency in Knoxville, Tennessee. We're doing something revolutionary here today. That you guys are sort of an experiment in a new way to raise funds. It turns out that we can't sell home or auto policies across state lines because of the regulations, but we can sort of kind of sell things like life insurance. So I've arranged with the promoters of this event to lock the doors, and admission to today's event is free. To get in is free, but you're actually going to have to pay to get out, okay? So everybody's going to have to talk to me about some sort of insurance policy before they leave here today. Actually, I'm just kidding, although business isn't that great, so if you would, that'd be great. But the reason I bring that up is because starting your own business, especially business that buys and sells products or services, you start thinking a lot about selling and marketing. And I've been doing all sorts of research into sales, reading and listening to stuff by people like Zig Ziglar and folks like that. And as I often do, I then relate it back to how to advance liberty. And it's just mind-boggling to me, the fact that people can sell all sorts of stuff. They can sell waterless cookware, they can sell Ginsu knives, they can sell chia pets, but somehow we can't sell the most important thing in the world, human liberty, human freedom. And the reason, of course, is very simple. It's because we don't try to sell it. We don't try to market it. You know, there's a debate that is constantly ongoing within libertarian circles. What is the best way to promote liberty? Is it through direct action, electoral politics, or is it through education? Now, I don't have anything against electoral politics. In fact, I think that we should try to advance liberty in whatever way that we possibly can, so long, of course, that it's peaceful and nonviolent. But nevertheless, I do pretty much fall into the education camp. However, my friends that are in the electoral politics camp bring up a really good point. You can go out and you can educate 10,000 people, but if those people don't take action, then all your efforts in education are worthless. And that's absolutely true. So what we have to do is we have to impart knowledge. We have to educate people in a way that also compels them to act upon what we said, to take action. In other words, we must market liberty. And we've got to get rid of this word education, because education is not the key. And it's a component, but it's marketing that we have to do. Harry Brown was extremely influential on my thinking. How many people here know who Harry Brown is? Harry Brown was a very noted financial commentator, newsletter writer. He was a two-time Libertarian Party presidential nominee. He wrote a book called How to Profit from the Coming Devaluation back in 1971, which accurately predicted that President Nixon was going to close the gold window, and that put him on the map. He also wrote another book that really everybody should read. It's often called the first libertarian self-help book. It's called How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World, and it's done wonders for me as far as how I look at the world and my interaction with it. But one of the things that Harry always said is that we have to market liberty. We have to become salesmen for liberty. Now, people all the time ask me, how can I have an impact? I'm not Ron Paul. I'm not going to run for political office. I don't write for a newspaper. I'm not on TV. Although I would say in this day and age, there's this thing called the internet, and anyone can start a blog or a website, and we should all do that. But in any case, I don't have the reach of a politician or of a media figure. I almost said an entertainment figure, because nowadays the lines between media and entertainment have been crossed. But I don't have that sort of reach. How can I have an impact? Well, what all of us can do is all of us can become salesmen for liberty. Look at how many people each of us touches in the course of our life. I mean, 10,000 people, 100,000 people, and of course, you know, you're not going to sell to everybody. But nevertheless, there are people that you touch that this message will resonate with. Well, you may say, well, you know, what I can do is so minute. I mean, there's, you know, it's a big world. There's so many people out there. How is that going to change anything? Well, I'd like to share a story with you guys. This reminds me of this grandfather and grandson are walking along the beach in the morning one day at low tide, and there's all these sand dollars on the beach, thousands and thousands of them. And the grandfather would walk a little bit, and he'd reach down, and he'd pick up a sand dollar, and he'd throw it out in the ocean. And the grandson asked what he was doing. And the grandfather said, well, what's going to happen with the sand dollar is he's not going to survive because he's out of water. The sun's baking it. He's going to dry up, and it's going to die. So he picks another up and throws it in the water. And the grandson says, yeah, Granddad, but, you know, what difference does it make? Look how many there are. And his grandfather reaches down, picks one up, and throws it out in the ocean and says, it makes all the difference in the world to that one. That's what we can do. And our efforts, which may seem like not a whole lot, build upon themselves. Okay? How many folks here think that you can change the world by setting out to change the world? You can't. You can't. Yeah, wrong answer. You can't. What you can do is change your corner of the world and then keep on making that corner of the world bigger and bigger and bigger. I'm here today because many years ago, a friend of mine, a coworker, just mentioned the term libertarianism to me. He said, "You sound like a libertarian." I was almost 30 years old, and it had been the first time in my life that I had ever even heard the term. And then from there, I went and I studied, and I researched, and I was like, my gosh, not only, and I'll tell you, it's funny, because when he said I was a libertarian, I was like, dude, you know, don't be calling me names. I will fight you right here, okay? But I found out, wow, I am a libertarian, and it makes a lot of sense. And since then, I have dedicated at least a portion of my life to trying to spread this message, to trying to advance liberty. Now, some of you may object to the use of the term sales or marketing in regards to liberty. I mean, what are you talking about here? Liberty is not a used car, okay? We're not going to be used car salesmen. And that's not what I'm saying in any case, but it also, I think that reveals somewhat anti-market bias, if I can say that. You know, because if you look at the market and what happens when people buy and sell, is that a salesman doesn't actually, he's not a con man. He's not out there forcing people to buy a product, as the liberals often think that he is. What he's doing is he's persuading people to look at things from a different point of view. You see, no one enters into a transaction in the market without thinking that both sides are going to benefit. Unfortunately, we seem to be more concerned with debating and winning the debate as we do selling liberty. And the problem with the debate is that only one side wins, okay? I win the debate, but does the other person get anything out of it other than to feel bad because I feel stupid? In fact, I would like to quickly give you the typical libertarian sales pitch, and I say quickly because it goes something like this. I'm obviously right, you're obviously wrong. You know, that's it. Well, we're going to have to get over that, okay? And we're going to have to learn to market, and we're going to have to learn to sell, because guess what? The bad guys are really good salesmen, and they're really good marketers. If you look at the history of America, how is it that we went from a country that was founded on the idea of liberty? You know, we never got there, unfortunately. It was very imperfect, but nevertheless, that's where this country was founded. How is it that now we have the biggest government that the world has ever seen? It's because the bad guys are great marketers. Okay? Sales is the name of the game, folks, and if you want to play, you're going to have to learn how. And look at what they do. Okay? With all this war on terror stuff, has any politician ever come out and said that I'm going to suspend the Bill of Rights or I'm going to take your liberties from you? No. What do? We need the tools necessary to protect you from criminals and terrorists. And we need to strike a balance between liberty and security. It's a marketing technique. Look at Social Security. They never came out and said, you people are too stupid and irresponsible to save for old age. What did they say? Give us that responsibility. Look at the welfare state. They have never come out and said, we think that you are too callous to take care of people in need and to help your neighbors. What do they say instead? We need to have a benevolent government that takes care of its citizens. It's all been marketing, folks. It's what we've faced through the years, and that's how our government has gotten so big. Now, that's not to say that there isn't a time and a place to debate people. For instance, you are going to find people that you're never going to convince of anything. And I shouldn't use the word convince because you're not trying to convince anybody. You can't convince anyone of anything. They have to convince themselves. All we can do is persuade. All we can do is try to get people to look at things from a different perspective. But nevertheless, there are people who are so married to their paradigms that you are never going to convince them or get them to convince themselves of anything. They will never discard their paradigm. For instance, how many of you guys are familiar with the name Paul Krugman? Yeah. Boo. Okay, you know it. Paul Krugman is a he won the Nobel Prize. And he's also a New York Times columnist, best-selling author, the whole deal. And Paul Krugman is, basically his advice is a lot of the reason that the country is suffering through the economic malaise that it is. He is a neo-Keynesian money-printing megalomaniac who believes that the way that you solve everything is by having the government become more and more and more involved and by printing as much money as possible until the currency finally collapses and we all suffer a fiery death. Somehow he doesn't quite see that. In any case, you're not going to convince a guy like Paul Krugman that he's wrong. Okay? In fact, Paul Krugman will not debate Austrian economists. He's been offered $100,000 to go to charity if he would debate Bob Murphy. The closest that he's ever come is a debate with Ron Paul, about 10 minutes on one of the financial channels. And what was amazing about that was the fact that here you have a Nobel Prize winning economist debating a baby doctor. And the baby doctor more than held his own against the Nobel Prize winning economist. Now, if you were to switch these roles around, do you think that Paul Krugman would have been able to debate or even converse with Ron Paul about childbirth and taking care of babies? Absolutely not. And the reason isn't because Ron Paul's a very intelligent man, which he is. The reason is because Ron Paul knows his stuff and he is operating in a real world paradigm. He's using real economics, not whatever passes for economics in Paul Krugman's mind. Nevertheless, the value there is not in convincing Paul Krugman he's wrong, because you're not going to do it. The guy makes tons of money by promoting a false paradigm, by promoting this bogus nonsense economics. He has tons of prestige. You are never going to convince him he's wrong. But what did the people watching that program, at least some of them, do? They were like, how is it that a baby doctor can hang with a Nobel Prize winning economist? Maybe I should look into what that guy's saying because it makes sense and the other guy's stuff doesn't make sense. And that's what we can do. It's not so much trying to debate and win the debate against that person. It's trying to win the hearts and minds of all the people that are watching the debate. So there is a time and a place for debate, but I would urge you guys to understand that if you're just debating for the sake of debate, you are not advancing liberty. All you're doing is debating for your own entertainment, which is fine, but don't think that that's accomplishing anything, at least in the mind of your debating partner. Now, I'm not going to say that any of this is easy, okay? I'm not up here wearing rose-colored glasses and saying, all we have to do is sell liberty and everything's going to be okay and all this stuff. I realize that people are often married to the paradigms. It's very hard to get them to break out of the paradigms. But I do have some stories about how I've been able to do it. For instance, I have a friend who, years ago, when I started talking to him about this stuff, he was like, well, gosh, if the TSA isn't there, who's going to protect us on the airplanes? Well, a couple weeks ago, this guy comes up to me, he's like, hey, I have some scripts that I'm thinking about doing for some videos on Austrian economics. Would you like to check them out? So it can happen, but sometimes it just takes a while, okay? If we're going to sell liberty, the first thing we have to do is we have to do what all good salespeople and all good marketing people do, and that is define our product. What is liberty? I'll give you my definition. This is very important because throughout history, what's happened is the bad guys, the really good marketers, have misconstrued, been able to throw all sorts of misconceptions, mischaracterize, and sometimes outright lie about our product. And they have made their product, statism, seem like it is far superior to our product, liberty. So what is liberty? That's pretty simple. It's based on this concept that you own yourself. And if you own yourself and you own your life, no one has the right to initiate violence against you without just cause. In other words, if you initiate violence against them, first, violence can be used in self-defense.